America's debt is now over $38 trillion. So, protect your savings with something real. Gold. Sanctuary Metals helps you move a portion of your retirement into physical gold. Tax-deferred and penalty-free. Please call 800-801-6487 or just visit sanctuarymetals.com to get your free retirement defense guide. That's sanctuarymetals.com.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, folks. I'm Larry Kudlow. It's great to be with you today, as always. By the way, let's see. You can live stream this radio show over the internet, LarryKudlowShow.com, LarryKudlowShow.com. You can live stream this. It will run everywhere around the country, throughout the globe, including the solar system and the Milky Way. So you can live stream us. And just one plug, during the week, if come join us, welcome Fox Business, fabulous Fox Business. And the name of the show is Kudlow, and it's 4 to 5 p.m. every day, 4 to 5 p.m. And if for some reason you can't make it at 4 o'clock, well, just text your favorite 9-year-old, and she will show you how to DVR the show. You'll never miss a thing. And we had some big news this week, and we're going to cover it on the show quite a bit. President Trump finally announced his pick to run the Federal Reserve, our central bank. Very important position. Very important. Controlling the money supply, influencing interest rates, and the dollar, and supervising the banking system. And his pick, Mr. Trump picked Kevin Warsh, who was always, named as one of the likely candidates. Kevin Warsh, friend of mine, a very dear friend of mine, personal friend of mine. And actually, both the leading candidates, Kevin Hassett, who runs the National Economic Council, it's the job I had in the first term, a very dear, dear friend and a brilliant guy and a popular guy. President Trump has been praising Kevin Hassett. But Trump wanted Kevin to stay at the NEC to help him inside the White House and to help communicate Mr. Trump's policies and his successes. And Hassett has done a fabulous job. Very popular guy, brilliant guy, incidentally. So Trump went with Kevin Warsh, who was a member of the Federal Reserve Board, 10, 12 years ago, maybe a little longer than that. Anyway, he was on the Fed. He's the youngest guy, I think, in the Fed history. He was 33 or 35 years old. And he served for 5 or 6 years. But he's become an important critic of the Fed. And I'll say this, I think Kevin Warsh is going to be a transformational Fed head. I really do. Because the Federal Reserve has done such a lousy job down through the years. I mean, you look at Jay Powell, the highest inflation rate in over 40 years with virtually no growth. We haven't really had any growth in this country. It's you're less than 2% growth for the past 20-something years. Now, some of that is because we spend too much money and we borrow too much money. I get that. But also the Federal Reserve has gotten in the way of the economy. I mean, every time the economy picks up, they start tightening interest rates. And they believe that economic growth causes inflation. And they are wrong. More people working do not cause inflation. Economic growth does not cause inflation. Creating too much money causes inflation. The printing presses and the spending from the federal government. That's the inflation problem. So Kevin Warsh knows this. I mean, I've talked to him. He's been a guest on the TV show many times. As I said, he's a very dear friend, he and his wife, Jane. Smart fella. As I said, he worked for the Fed. He knows the ropes. He knows where the bodies are buried. He knows who's a good staff person and who's a bad staff person. And he will dig in and change the models. You're growing. The economy right now, under Trump, is growing at better than 4% at an annual rate. That's phenomenal. And the papers won't cover it. The media doesn't want to cover it. They talk about affordability. You know what affordability is? Growth. People get more take-home pay. Inflation's come all the way down below 2%, 1.5% inflation. And the economy's growing at better than 4%. And the one big beautiful bill is spurring this. Trump's signature achievement. Tax cuts, deregulation, drill baby drill, free and fair reciprocal trade. And I believe Warsh will subscribe to that. Jay Powell, the current guy, is at war with Trump and the Trump administration. At war. Always prattling on about tariff inflation, which never happened. Gloomy. And, of course, Trump's taken off after him. So you got a different guy now. Kevin Warsh will work well with Kevin Hassett, the NEC director, and Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary. They will work well together. They will cooperate. Warsh is a growth guy, and he's going to keep inflation down. In fact, he's got the complete right idea. He wants to shrink the Fed's balance sheet, all the assets they own, all the Treasury bonds and mortgage-backed bonds the Fed owns. They still have about $6.5 trillion. The peak was about $9.5 trillion. 10, 12 years ago, it was about 700 or 800 million. You see, the printing presses have been working overtime. That's where the inflation comes from. And then the Fed has to throttle everything back to fight the inflation that they helped create. And then you have no economic growth. Now that is changing. Trump has a completely Trump himself, he said in Davos, and he said it again yesterday, growth doesn't cause inflation. And Warsh knows that. That's why he's the right man for the job. He's going to change those models. And he will work cooperatively with the Trump economic advisors and with the president. The president likes Warsh a lot. One little quote. I've interviewed Kevin many times on the TV show. A quote, I think it was from this summer, quote, so my simple version of this is run the printing press a little bit less, let the balance sheet come down, let Secretary Bessent handle the fiscal accounts, and in so doing, you can have materially lower interest rates. He's exactly right. Stop the printing presses. That's the source of the inflation. And when you do that, inflation and inflation expectations come down. And that will allow interest rates to fall. Right? Interest rates right now, in my view, they're about, 1% too high, something like that. The 10 years, 4.25. I think it could drop down to, under good monetary policy, I think you could drop that into the low threes. And the short-term rates, which the Fed basically controls, they're in 3.5%. They're almost 4%, a little less than 4%. I think they should drop down to 2%. And for those of you who are in the markets, I know many listeners don't follow this closely, but you had, say, 2% short-term rates and let's say 3.5% long-term rates. It's an upward sloping yield curve, which provides plenty of liquidity for the economy to grow. One thing that Kevin Warsh is going to do, he's going to stop all this left-wing, woke stuff that Jay Powell subscribed to. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion. Get rid of that. and has nothing to do with monetary policy. Stop this left-wing social woke policy. Jay Powell also subscribed. He just went crazy over climate change. A hoax. Disproven. Warsh will get rid of all that climate. I mean, Jay Powell had the Federal Reserve supervisors tell banks, you're not going to get a loan for oil, gas, or any fossil fuels. Crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. Warsh will put an end to that. And then you had a bunch of Federal Reserve Bank presidents, these regional banks, New York, and Atlanta, Dallas, and so forth around the country, San Francisco. Several of the presidents of those regional banks were undertaking insider stock market trading. Terrible. It's like in the Congress, in the House, you got people. It's like Nancy Pelosi, maybe the greatest investor in history, Pelosi, using inside information to build up her portfolio. And Jay Powell, he barely touched that and was always late to stopping it. So there's no compliance with the rules. You can bet Kevin Warsh, who was the governor when he was on the Federal Reserve Board, he was the administration governor. So he knows how to do that. He'll put an end to that, all that insider trading. And then, Warsh looks at the money supply. He looks at commodity prices. He's in favor of King Dollar. All the right things to give us real price stability. Get back to where we were. And that means lower rates, and that means the economy can really power ahead. You've got a productivity-led economy right now. Unit labor costs 1%, 1.1%. Wages minus productivity. Unit labor, that's the best measure of labor cost and probably inflation. Just a little over 1%. You've got the AI revolution. You've got a tremendous boom in business capital spending, machinery, equipment, using the 100% immediate write-off depreciation, all from the Trump policies. Factories are being built. Mr. Trump's trade policies are bringing so much investment here, new factories from foreign countries, South Korea, Europe, etc. We'll talk about that over the course of the show. Trump has a very good op-ed piece in today's Wall Street Journal defending his tariffs and opposing the Wall Street Journal editorial board. So Kevin Warsh, a guy I think is perfect to change the bad models at the Fed, to narrow down their mission, to get rid of all the excesses, all these bonds that they own, get rid of them. Stop the printing press. And look, step back for a minute. Frankly, in the last 20 years, under Jay Powell and other Fed chairs, in the last 20 years, the Federal Reserve has financed big government socialism. All the spending. And they borrow it, they sell bonds to finance it, right? The Fed buys the bonds. And when they buy the bonds, they increase the money supply. And whether they buy the bonds directly, which they usually don't, they buy them from the Wall Street banks. Same difference. Fed just pumps in more money. We didn't have that in the 80s under Paul Volcker, and we didn't have that in the 90s under Alan Greenspan. But as I say, in the last 20 years plus, the game has changed for the worse. There's no reason you can't have 4 or 5% economic growth or more with all the incentives to work and invest and take risks and all the deregulation. And I know oil prices are a little higher now because of Iran, but all that will settle. Drill, baby, drill. You're going to have falling gas, even more falling gasoline and energy prices that permeate the economy. Kevin Warsh won't stop that. He'll nurture that. I know it because I've interviewed him so many times and talked to him privately. So I'll just summarize. It's great. It's a terrific choice by Mr. Trump. Terrific choice, Kevin Warsh, to run the Fed. And frankly, it will almost ensure a golden age for the American economy. Terrific stuff. I got to take a break. They're yelling at me. I'm Kudlow. We'll be back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're going to have some of the best economists in the country talk about Kevin Warsh and the Fed and the outlook for the American economy and interest rates. It's a lot of fun. Art Laffer's coming up, John Carney of Breitbart, the great famous Steve Forbes, Mike Faulkender, who was the Deputy Treasury Secretary. They're all going to weigh in. It'll be great fun. We're going to do a big economic show and bullish. I hope they're all bullish anyway. I'm bullish. Let me just say one other thing. And we will talk about President Trump wrote this really incredible op-ed piece in the Wall Street Journal defending his tariffs and arguing that the Journal, which has opposed the tariffs, completely wrong. Donald J. Trump, my tariffs have brought America back. Very interesting piece and well done. And I got to tell you, I'm a free trader, but I agree with him about reciprocity. You know, if Japan and South Korea have high tariffs and we can't sell, or China, which is the biggest probably culprit, well, we've got to fight back. And tariffs are the way Trump fights back. And the interesting thing is there has been no retaliation like there was in the 1930s. That's where the Journal has been wrong. Instead, these countries have come to Trump to make a deal. He's using tariffs to make deals, and the deals are very favorable for the USA. And money is flowing into our economy. Okay, $10 trillion at least, maybe more. The president says 18. The website at the White House says it's about 10. But the point is, huge amounts of money are flowing in, and the tariff policy is working. So we'll cover that too. Laffer and John Carney can take a quick break. I'm Kudlow. Stay with us, folks. Lots coming.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So, look, we're going to spend some quality time, talking about Kevin Warsh as the new Federal Reserve chairman. I mean, it's so important in terms of the economy and the stock market and, of course, interest rates. And I understand many of my listeners, you're not professional investors or economists, but hang in there because, this is very, very important and will determine, I think, the economy and maybe the midterm elections as well. And as I said at the outset, I am a strong supporter of Warsh. Known him for years, interviewed him many times on the TV show, and I believe he has his principles on the economy are spot on, and he is pro-growth, and that's going to be very important. Anyway, let me bring in my dear friend, mentor, Arthur Laffer, who's the chairman and chief economist of Laffer Associates and a recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I was in the room when Mr. Trump did that. In fact, I sort of crying while I watched it. Anyway, Art's new book with Steve Moore, The Trump Economic Miracle, and the Plan to Unleash Prosperity Again. And my great friend John Carney, Breitbart news editor for economics and finance and co-author of the Breitbart Business Digest. And I'll say to listeners, the Breitbart Business Digest, it's a daily. It's just phenomenal. You got to read it if you're at all interested in the stock market or the economy, you got to read it. Anyway, I go to Breitbart early in the morning for the headlines. So, Art Laffer, it's a pleasure. And
my pleasure, Larry. You know you're my hero. So just all the lovely things you say about me. I wish my mom and dad could hear all that. My mom would have actually believed it. But just joking, Larry.
Yes, she would have believed it. All right, we all believe it. You taught me economics. Very important. Give me just 30, 40 seconds, Art, on Kevin Warsh. Your impression.
Well, Kevin Warsh has a great personality, number one. He gets along with people. He's nice. He's not offensive. He's got a lot of experience at the Fed. So on a social level and on a professional level, he is exceptionally well qualified to be there. In addition, he is a lawyer, trained a lawyer, so he knows how to deal with a lot of the other issues of the Fed as well. And in that sense, he's also very competent. And he's very good in economics, Larry, and he understands the difference between supply-side economics and Keynesian economics, especially as it pertains to monetary policy. For example, you and I have for a long time been talking about how economic growth does not cause inflation. It doesn't. When you increase the supply of goods and services, their prices fall, they don't rise. The Fed has this all backwards. What he also understands is the way you beat lower interest rates and beat inflation is not by buying bonds in the open market. It's by selling bonds in the open market and contracting the Fed's balance sheet. That is the only way you can really get control of inflation and thereby bring down the inflation premium on interest rates. He understands all that, Larry. And, he's just phenomenal at it, and I couldn't be happier.
First of all, thank you for all that. It's a great summary. I just want to say to listeners, again, who may not be, totally familiar with all the jargon, just think of it. Kevin Warsh has said this so many times. He said, slow down and stop the printing press, the creating money. All right. That's a simple way, and it's an oversimplification, but it's useful. Stop printing all this money, which is basically financing big government socialism and all these programs that have given us budget deficits of $2 trillion a year under Joe Biden. Stop it. Don't nurture it. Don't accommodate it. Stop it. And when you stop it, inflation come down and interest rates will come down. Now, John Carney, I want to talk to you. Your piece pans him and you're saying here, let's see, Kevin Warsh is a threat to working people, and he's too much of an inflation hawk. It's very interesting. I didn't know that you had these views.
So to be clear, Larry, that's not my view. I'm quoting a critic, Neil Dunham,
yeah,
in that piece. And I wanted to give air because, look, there's I understand why some people are a little bit nervous. We already saw a lot of that outpouring. Look, you and Art Laffer are enough for me, so you guys have sold me on this. But when the announcement was made, we saw people like Jason Furman, the Harvard law professor who was an Obama administration advisor, Ben Bernanke, Mark Carney, the Prime Minister of Canada. All of these guys were praising him. And I think that made a lot of people nervous, right? Because those guys are not on our side. They're not supply-siders. They don't agree with us. And they were, they were saying, this is a great choice. So that made people nervous. And look, Kevin Warsh does have a history of being hawkish on inflation. But I think, and I said this on the television show yesterday, I think people are wrong when they think that Donald Trump is not hawkish on inflation. Of course he is. He hates inflation. We had almost no inflation in his first term. His point about cutting interest rates is that that inflation is coming down. When he was objecting to the Fed hiking during his first term, the whole point was there was no inflation and they were hiking. So he doesn't want the Fed to use its models, which tell them that, that lowering immigration will be inflationary, that tariffs will be inflationary. He says that if that's what's holding back the Fed, they absolutely should be cutting. And he also, and we heard this from people like Stephen Byron as well, that if you are raising productivity, you also can be lowering interest rates, because that is, as our Laffer just told us, when you increase the supply of goods and services, then you have less inflation. So I actually don't think Kevin Warsh is this guy who, the way he's been portrayed as, as some sort of uber hawk who won't cut rates. I think he's actually on board with Donald Trump when it comes to this.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. That is what you said on the TV show yesterday, and that's why I was a little bit surprised. I don't know. Neil Dutta will be Neil Dutta. I know who he is. He's actually been a guest on the show every now and then. Maybe I'll have him back and we can debate it.
I'd like to give a little bit of both sides sometimes.
Yeah.
I think it's worth, letting people know that there are critics out there, and let them see what the arguments are.
I think, Art, I say this to both of you, the media will try to make this into a battle. Like, oh my God, he's an inflation fighter and Trump isn't, and so therefore he's going to have trouble, or he's going to have trouble inside the Federal Reserve, et cetera. They're always looking for angles. But, Arthur, to come back to your point, Kevin's going to be the first guy, I think, since Greenspan, maybe since Volcker. You and I liked Volcker's commodity price rule. I know that Kevin watches the commodity indexes as potential inflation indicators. He keeps an eye on M2. I know that's old-fashioned, but he keeps an eye on M2. And he keeps an eye on the dollar. He's a king dollar guy. And I think that discipline informs him. And Art, I think that's what we have not had that in 20 years. And he doesn't want any more QE. And I say that to John Carney too. We're going to get rid of QE including QT, including buying 40 or 60 billion of treasury bills. That stuff's going to be out the window. And it should be, Arthur. It's all garbage.
Yeah, it is, Larry. But the difference between why people are critics of Warsh or they like Warsh depends upon the model of how they see the economy operating. And by the way, he's really good and right on. And I was so glad the quote you had there was not his, but was someone else's.
Right.
I really loved it. But here we have, how do you bring inflation down? The Keynesians say you do it by buying bonds. That bids the price of bonds up, and interest rates fall, and the balance sheet of the Fed expands. From 2008 until 2 years ago, the Fed expanded the balance sheet from $850 billion to $9.7 trillion. That's a huge increase in liquidity, which has caused inflation, which in turn causes higher interest rates. That's two very different models. Should the Fed buy bonds to lower interest rates, or should they sell bonds to lower interest rates? Now, the Keynesians say they should buy bonds, and I think the Keynesians are totally wrong. The Keynesians don't really even understand the theory that they're operating on. What you want to do is sell bonds and get king dollar, get stable prices, and then you will have much lower interest rates, which is exactly what Kevin Warsh, you and I and Steve Moore and John Carney and the others understand fully well. But these people at the Fed today aren't trained in good economics, so they just sit there and make mistake after mistake just the same way they make mistake after mistake on fiscal policy. They think government spending stimulates the economy. That's stupid. Have you ever heard of a poor person spending himself into wealth? It makes no sense, but there they go.
It's we're on radio, so this is all being taped. Because Arthur, that was a wonderful riff. Tremendous riff. John Carney, I think you agree with most of what Art said, but I think the battle here, Kevin Warsh is well schooled in the principles of sound money that Art just described. I think the battle is going to be bureaucratically to get the Fed to change its models and its thinking. And it's not John. I worked at the Fed, but I've also, I used to have lunch with Jay Powell every couple of weeks. The Fed, it's the board staff that you have to deal with. That's where the power is.
That's right. And I think so first I just wanted to mention on QE, one of the craziest things that I think has happened in my lifetime is the fact that QE was originally launched as a temporary emergency program. And then without any vote, without any Congress, decide, when we make major changes in how the American economy works in a democracy, that should happen because of a vote, or at least because of public deliberation. We slid from emergency bond buying by the Fed right after the financial crisis to a permanently larger Fed balance sheet with almost no public discussion about how that would work, almost no debate. People like you, people like Art Laffer weren't even invited to give the other side of it. You're absolutely right about the battle being with the Fed models. The good news is that the chairman of the Federal Reserve is the boss of all of those guys running the models.
That's right.
They report to him.
That's right. And only
the rest
him.
of the board can't do anything about it.
If
he can tell them what to do.
If Jay Powell thinks he's going to sit around for a couple of years as a governor, he could do that, but he won't have any help. You don't even get an assistant unless the chairman tells the staff to help one of the governors. You don't get anything. I mean, it's a very weird system. I knew it when Wayne Angell and Manley Johnson were governors because they were very dear friends of mine. I used to go and they had to fight to get one deputy to help them with research. But we'll take a break. Warsh, I think, is a very good bureaucrat. Having been at the Fed for 5 or 6 years as a governor, and he was the administrative guy, he knows where the bodies are buried, and I think he knows how to change the models. Let me take a break. Very important. We'll have some quotes from him later on. Folks, we are talking to two of the great analysts, Art Laffer, the best of the best, and John Carney from Breitbart. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So interest rates should be lower. The balance sheet should be smaller. And, Larry, those two things are related to each other.
Terrific stuff. Arthur, you got a lot. That was an interview I did with him. I don't know. I think it was this past summer. Actually, we got a second. Let's hit the second quote, too. Hang on.
So my simple version of this is run the printing press a little bit less, let the balance sheet come down, let Secretary Besson handle the fiscal accounts, and in so doing, you can have materially lower interest rates.
John Carney, I'm buying it. I'm buying into it. Just what he said. Stay with it. It's like,
it's great, Larry. And by the way, I'm going to forward that clip to his critic, Neil Duther, you quoted earlier, because that's really important. He's not calling for higher rates. He's calling for a return to the successful monetary policy that we followed up until we exploded the balance sheet higher under Bernanke and Yellen and then Jay Powell.
He's moving it.
Exactly right.
He's moving it back to, some combination of Volcker and Greenspan. And, we had 25, 30 years of price stability, 2% or less. And then, and I think Art, QE is, dead and buried. No more. I mean, he turned against QE when he was at the Fed. He was in favor of the first one to stop the absolute catastrophe. But when Bernanke went again, Kevin, who was a governor and was close to Bernanke, he rebelled against it, wrote an op-ed piece. And Bernanke didn't take it personally. But I think QE is dead, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, it should have been dead before it was even started, by the way, Larry. It was never even important in the crisis there. It really wasn't. But we did it, and it is dead, and Bernanke should take it personally because he had a bad model of running the Fed. Yeah. His textbook was perfect on. Bernanke's textbook on balance sheets, money, and inflation was exactly right. And then when he gets head of the Fed, he decides to wing it. And he does everything the wrong way. And Bernanke started this, Yellen made it worse, and Powell just pushed it to the moon. And we're hopefully going to come back to sound money the way the U.S. has been run over some considerable periods of time.
Bernanke, it's so interesting. It's about Kevin Warsh, not Bernanke, but he was the chairman of the Princeton Economics Department, and he was a Republican, which is incredible. And he was a Friedmanite, basically, Milton Friedman. And he wrote extensively about the Great Depression, and talking about, how the money supply was shrinking in those days. And you're right. And then he goes into the Federal Reserve Board and starts applying this stuff. He went crazy with QE and QT. And I doubt if any Ivy League college has a Republican as head of the economics department, but he was. I'll give him some credit. John Carney.
That's only officially, Larry. That's only officially. He was not what you and I believe is good economist. He just wasn't. There are some Republicans that are really off base, and he was one of them. Sorry, I'm a Yaley, by the way, myself, just for the record. I know you're Princeton, too, so you stand up for him. We Yaleys have to know better.
I used to talk. I knew him when he was there. Anyway, let's get off this. John Carney here today. You read the op-ed. It's really interesting. Donald J. Trump : My tariffs have brought America back, in the Wall Street Journal. And basically, Amy's telling the Journal editorial board, I was right and you're wrong. John, did you read it this morning? I hope you did.
I did. It was fantastic. He has been right this entire time. It's so good to actually see them forcefully making the case like this. I think it's really important. The Wall Street Journal editorial board owes the president an apology. They've been wrong the entire time. One more thing I wanted to say about Kevin Warsh is one great thing he could do is create job opportunities for all of those conservative Republican economists who have been shut out of the upper echelons of economics departments. Look, if he hires on the right economists, that opens up career paths. It will draw more conservative. Because, frankly, if I were a young man entering academia right now, I would be worried about going into an economics department because your future is bleak. Warsh can help fix that by hiring the right people into the Federal Reserve and making them the Fed economists, replace all those guys who are there now.
Can I respond to John?
Wait, I just want to say, my first job was at the New York Fed. I went from the Princeton Graduate School to the New York Fed. Just saying. Go ahead, Art. I got a minute left.
Yeah, I just want to first say, John, you are a young man. And I really appreciate when you're 85 as I am, you are a young man. And I would do the other side of the balance sheet more than I would the side that you're looking at. There are 300 economists hired there who do absolutely nothing. And I mean nothing productively. We need to get rid of that balance sheet as well and get rid of 250 of them. If you need 50, God knows why you'd even need 50.
All right.
You should probably do it with 10 and just do it and just run the Fed that way. All those people do is lead to mission drift.
Yeah, and that's you're right. You're 1,000% right. Anyway, that was Art Laffer. That was John Carney. Gentlemen, thank you ever so much. Folks, stick around. We're going to talk to Steve Forbes and Mike Faulkender in the next segment. I'm Kudlow. Please, it's great fun talking about Warsh.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So, folks, some more about Kevin Warsh and the Fed and the economy. We'll get the economic outlook, too. We're going to welcome to the show my dear friend, the great Steve Forbes, chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media. And Steve's latest book, Inflation, What It Is, Why It's Bad, and how to fix it. And my pal Michael Faulkender is former Deputy Treasury Secretary, working on those tax cuts in the first year. Also runs the economics for the America First Policy Institute. Gentlemen, welcome. I got a clip. I've got a sound from Kevin Warsh. Maybe we can bump in with that, please, fellas.
When I was at the Fed, I talked frequently about the need for Fed reform. Then around a decade ago, I started to say what the Fed needs is regime change. Well, they're sure proving it now. Regime change means new sets of policies, new way of thinking about economic growth, a new understanding of what really drives inflation. It also means new personnel.
Wow. You never hear people. That was very direct and blunt. Regime change at the Fed, okay? So, Steve Forbes, what do you make of it?
Well, the key thing is now I think he will get through the Senate, and then he's going to have to battle inside. And we've discussed about how the fact that he's worked inside the Fed and it was in the center of the crisis of 2008, 2009, 2007, gives him a great experience in terms of how to handle that bureaucracy. And part of it is I think he's going to have to make personnel changes and also make very clear that henceforth the Federal Reserve no longer believes that prosperity causes inflation, and we're going to pay close attention to the value of the U.S. dollar. Now, that would be an intellectual earthquake inside. They'll resist it, but he does have the powers to make personnel changes, and he should announce the policy right up front. A new day is at hand. For the first time in decades, we're getting away from this ridiculous idea that people doing well is bad, and the Fed's bias against economic growth is no longer going to be reigning.
You know, Steve, that was a great riff, by the way. Thank you for that. That's the kind of thing he should say at his confirmation hearing, in the Senate Banking Committee. Right, he'll have an opening, right? He should just get all that stuff out. And you know what? I'll bet he will. He's a strong guy. I'll bet he will. He'll lay it right out. And actually, he should have a session with you before he goes before the committees. I don't know if anything's been scheduled yet. Michael Faulkender, can I ask you? Look, you're the Deputy Treasury Secretary. We talked a little bit about this on the TV show. The coordination between the Federal Reserve, the Treasury, and I'm going to put the NEC in there. But when I was an NEC director, I would meet with Jay Powell, I guess about once a month, something like that, maybe once every 2 or 3 weeks for lunch. But Mnuchin, the Treasury Secretary, I believe met with him every week, every Friday for breakfast or lunch. Can you fill in the blanks? Because I don't think people understand that there is coordination. Even Jay Powell's at war with Donald Trump, but there is coordination, and there should be coordination between these powerful agencies.
Absolutely. Yeah, they meet weekly. Usually it's a Thursday morning breakfast, but it depends upon their schedules, depending on where the secretary is in any particular week. But yes, they meet weekly. They rotate back and forth between whether it's at Treasury or over at the Federal Reserve. But yeah, there's an enormous amount of coordination that needs to take place. And if you think particularly during crisis moments, so if you think back to COVID and the pandemic, they created a number of Federal Reserve facilities, what are called 13-3 facilities. And in a post-Dodd-Frank world, even though they're Fed facilities, they require the approval of the Treasury Secretary. So there's normal operations that rely both on the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve, but you need to build those relationships so that in times of crisis there's a seamless engagement between the two. And then also remember that the comptroller of the currency is a part of the Treasury. Bank holding company supervision is at the Fed, and so 2 of your 3 regulators, with the FDIC being the third, are at Treasury and the Fed respectively, and so there's also coordination on those activities. So it's essential that there be a strong working relationship between the Treasury Secretary and the Fed chairman. And then, of course, finally, just back to what Steve was talking about, we can't have monetary policy fighting with fiscal and regulatory policy. Those need to complement each other. And that's why also there needs to be collaboration between those 2 leaders to make sure that they're not in conflict with each other.
Don't you think, well put, by the way, that's very informative. Don't you think with Scott Bessent at Treasury, there'll be good coordination? And actually, I'm going to put, Kevin Hassett will play a role in that too. So you've got 3 people who share similar values, the as Steve Forbes laid out and earlier Art Laffer laid out. Three people who share similar values, right? Growth is not inflationary. We want to bring down the inflation rate so interest rates can come down, protect the dollar. I mean, you've got an opportunity here, probably the best opportunity we've had in a long time. You got Bessent, you got Warsh, you got Hassett. I mean, I think that's really something.
It is an all-star team, and let me add one more thing that they are in agreement with, which you opened with, which is that the Fed needs to get back to its core mandate. Secretary Bessent put out a piece called Gain of Function at the Fed, they have been expanding their remit partially because of Congress, but partially on their own. And the reason that their independence is being, jeopardized or called into question is because if you expand beyond just monetary policy, where I think we have consensus that there needs to be some independence, and you start getting into fiscal and regulatory policy, well, then you're going to call for political oversight and a reduction in your independence. And so Kevin Warsh, being as articulate as he has about getting the Fed back to its core mission, he is going to find a lot of alignment with Secretary Bessent on that.
And what do you think, Steve? I mean, I think he'll carry that, publicly and in his hearings in the Senate and the House. I mean, I think he has the moral compass and the, human strength to just say it, to just put it out there. It's like your opening riff on this segment. I think he'll do that.
That's very important. And the point about the Fed getting back to its original mission, one of the things that the Fed did when they decided to make permanent their vast expansion of the balance sheet was to destroy the overnight bank lending market, which was a great instrument for finding out where credit is needed, where credit is short. And they destroyed that market. And that's why the federal funds rate is more of a museum piece now than anything doing with reality. And also, I hope he discusses about the role of interest rates on bank reserves. What's his policy on that? Are we going to phase that out? Or is that going to be a permanent tool, which is an expansion of the Fed's original writ? They shouldn't be paying interest on reserves.
Steve, what do you hear? Are you hearing anything from the investor side? What are people saying? Anything coming through Forbes, or what do you think personally?
Well, I think there's a relief, and you saw it in the gold price collapse and the silver collapse, even though they're still near record highs, is the feeling that the Federal Reserve is not going to go along with undermining the integrity of the dollar, and that there will be a chair at the Fed. I hate that word chair. I like chairman. Might as well call him a sofa, but he's chairman. going to be boss of the place. And there's going to be no nonsense about undermining the integrity of the dollar. And one of the things I hope he does in his testimony, they'll hit him, well, what about the dual mandate? Full employment and stable prices. Well, what needs to be hammered home by him is that the way you get full employment, the way you get stability in the marketplace is through a stable value for the dollar. He should keep hammering this Phillips curve nonsense that the Federal Reserve should not be trying to manipulate the activities of the economy, depressing it or stimulating it. No. Do the dollar right and let the government deal with fiscal and regulatory policy. And in terms of regulation, they need to make reforms on how they treat the banks, but that's another subject.
Mike Faulkender, are you following this goofy shutdown stuff in Washington? They're taking the Homeland Security out, but the other 5 appropriations they're going to have that's in there. But the Democrats are trying to sneak in changes, in the law and funding for ICE and other things about the border. This is like a backdoor way, but that's what Schumer's doing. He's an open border guy, but Homeland Security has already been funded, or at least the immigration part was funded in one big beautiful bill. So now we're going to have
That's the problem.
you've
right.
Go ahead.
You've already got ICE funded through the big, beautiful bill. And so what is it that they're taking away funding for? It's things like Transportation Safety Administration, the TSA checkpoints at the airport, right? So it doesn't make any sense to me. And not only that, this is just Chuck Schumer once again fearing that he's going to get a primary challenge by AOC. It's yet another excuse to appease his left-wing anti-strong border base. The people that are out there protesting, as you said, that we need open borders. And so he's using this as an excuse to try to score political points or give the impression to his left-wing base that he's satiating them, when in fact it's not going to actually do anything about immigration enforcement because they got separate funding through the big, beautiful bill.
About $75 billion worth. There may be arguments about the specifics there, but I just think Schumer, you're right about the AOC stuff, absolutely. But he's trying to use this to change the immigration and deportation laws, including ICE. And you know what's going on in Minneapolis, right? The mayor doesn't want the laws. I'm not going to play by the rules, and they won't help ICE. I mean, they're trying to codify this and hold up this last appropriation bill for Homeland Security.
Larry, I think it's more than that.
It's very bad.
They don't want attention on the areas where Trump's policies have been effective. They want to keep these ICE raids at the top of the news so that we're not talking about prosperity. We're not talking about growth. We are not talking about tax refunds. This is about monitoring or managing the news cycle in order to get people riled up before the midterms, because God forbid we allowed Trump to get any credit for all of the positive economic stories that are coming out as a result of the change in direction.
Yeah, big distraction.
And by the way, covering up the Minnesota scandals, which are in other states as well, of wasting all those billions and billions of dollars.
That's a key point. That they'd rather argue about ICE, and no one's dealing. You're exactly right. All of the fraud related to the various welfare programs and the Somalians and all that. But you're right. And by the way, it's in a lot of states, Steve.
Yes.
California, and God knows how many states are in. I got to
it's everywhere.
Let me take a quick break. We're talking with the great Steve Forbes, and we're talking with Mike Faulkender. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
There's also people who need to adjust their thinking to a modern economy. This isn't 1978 economics anymore, where we think that inflation is caused by high wages. Inflation's caused by this growth of money that you talk about. Just to underscore the point, back in the 2008 crisis, we cut rates to zero. We decided, because the economy was racing away from us, we'd create this new instrument called quantitative easing. And about every $1 trillion we grew the balance sheet, we thought roughly was worth about 50 basis points of cuts. Well, if you look right now, and you could take down that balance sheet $2 trillion over time in concert with the Treasury Secretary, that's a big rate cut that could come. And what you would do then is turbocharge the real economy.
Wow. Turbocharge the real economy. That was another interview that I had with him on the TV show. We're talking to Steve Forbes and Mike Faulkender. Steve Forbes, with all this going on, what's your outlook for the economy? You were all-star forecaster. You used to win the prize. They don't do that anymore, but you won the prize several times. What's your economic outlook?
Well, I think the economy has got very, very real strength. And it showed it through the Biden misadministration of the economy. The key thing, though, is we're going to have some crises. We're going to have, I think, in the financial markets, overseas especially, countries like Japan are grossly over-indebted, and they're not growing the way they should. And that's why we've got to have the model here, Larry. You can have growth without inflation, and when these crises erupt, this is going to be where Kevin Warsh's past experience is going to be very helpful in trying to stabilize exchange markets so that good economic policies can be put in. So that's what I worry about, not the specific things in terms of what Congress might do in terms of funding bills. I think that's going in the right direction, a good direction, regulations and the like. But crises overseas, events that initially are beyond your control.
You know, Mike Faulkender, Bessent, it's kind of interesting. So Warsh has had a lot of market experience. You know, Steve Forbes talking about a potential currency crisis or something like that. And sure, I mean, there is a likelihood. But so Warsh is a market guy, and Bessent was a market guy, right? Did Bessent work for Stanley Druckenmiller, or did he have the same? I think he did. But I'm just saying, you've got two market strategists. That's very interesting.
It is, and it's an important skill set to have. As Steve indicated, were there to be some kind of international crisis, particularly impacting currencies. I mean, for decades, that's what Bessent did, was be a currency fund manager. You know, he was, he's very well known for when he worked for Soros, being part of, making $1 billion on the devaluation of the pound, right? So his experience is extremely helpful, but let me also add in, I think there are a lot of tailwinds to the economy right now, but I think Warsh's most important thing is to tell Congress they have got to get the budget in order, because that's the way, that is the next step to making sure that economic growth continues.
Great point. And the Fed, we don't want the Fed financing big government socialism. You're absolutely right. Thank you, Mike Faulkender. Thank you, Steve Forbes. Terrific stuff. I really appreciate it. We're going to talk some politics with Joe Concha about the craziness in Washington, and Ambassador Robert O'Brien's going to tell us about regime change in Iran. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So, away from the economy and away from Kevin Warsh and the Fed, you've got this weird, I don't even know what to make of it. I mean, Minneapolis just is off the charts with arguments about illegals and deportations. But this side story about this guy, Don Lemon, I think that's how you say it. He used to be a CNN host. I don't think he has a job right now. And he got arrested for breaking up a church service, which is really pathetic. Just so pathetic. Anyway, somebody who knows about this and other political things is my great pal, Joe Concha, who's a Fox News contributor and WABC radio host. The Joe Concha Show plays Sundays from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Busy guy. His book is The Greatest Comeback Ever, Inside Trump's Big Beautiful Campaign. Joe, can you summarize it? I mean, I always thought this is, if I've said it right, Lemon was a dummy. I mean, I occasionally would look at it when he was on CNN. I just think he's a dummy.
That is the most accurate analysis that we have heard of this person who portrays himself as the next Walter Cronkite. Okay. No, he is an absolute performance artist, Larry. He is somebody who has basically been an attention-seeking narcissist like we have never seen in broadcasting, and now he's getting exactly what he wants, attention. That's what narcissists want, and by doing this illegal stunt, you talk to Jonathan Turley, you talk to any respected legal analyst, what he did is something that absolutely should be held accountable for. We had protesters, you want to call them that, agitators, provocators, up in the face of children saying, your parents are Nazis. They're there at Sunday school. Don Lemon literally interrogated the pastor that was there as well. But most importantly, Larry, before he went in, there are videos where he says, shut the cameras off so we can't show people what's happening here. In other words, he knew that this was going to be a protest. He participated in this, and now he gets to play the martyr with most of legacy media saying, this is Donald Trump attacking another member of the free press. It is not. It is a cheesy performance artist who would not be cast in any movie on 3 a.m. at Skinamax if given the choice. We'll leave it at that.
Well, that's well put.
Thank you.
Listeners can see why Joe is a busy guy on Fox News and WABC Radio. So, but Joe, he broke into the church, right? He stopped the church service, which is that's a crime.
Yes,
the law was passed decades ago. That's a crime.
Faith Act. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and is he going to jail? I mean, I was looking while I'm here in the studio at WABC. I was looking. Kayleigh McEnany is on, and the headline below is Don Lemon pleads not guilty to the Minnesota protest. So he's in court, and was he in jail? Is he going to jail, or what happens here?
He was held overnight, right, after he was arrested. But does he stay in jail before the trial happens? No, of course not. But in the end, this is as open and shut as the O.J. case. The problem is O.J. was found innocent by a jury of his peers, so I guess it depends on where this particular trial happens, who the judge is, just like with Trump. Same thing, right? In other words, it depends on where this game is played. But I mentioned the FACE Act. He also broke, ironically, the KKK Act as well.
Huh.
Yeah, and this is a guy, again, did Cronkite or Ted Koppel or Roger Mudd or Brinkley or even Bernard Shaw over at CNN just pick like somebody who you deem to be a journalist? Brett Baer, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think they bought donuts and coffee for a bunch of people who are about to storm a church and then say, I'm just here as a journalist covering a story? And by the way, he lives out on Long Island. Don Lemon does. Nice big mansion on Oyster Bay. And then he decided in the middle of January that he was going to, you know what? It's like that line in Casablanca, of all the Jim Mills and all the world, she walked into mine. In this case, in all the churches in Minnesota, thousands of them, Don Lemon, with his Jedi-like abilities, was able to determine where a protest was going to happen, a storming of a church on a Sunday morning. No, of course not. He was told to be there by the organizers. He then actually aided and abetted the organizers and went into the church and interrogated a pastor and other people that were there, all in the name of what he says is the First Amendment. I'm sorry, the First Amendment does not protect going into a church, storming it, and then harassing parishioners. That is against the law. He should go to jail. And I think in some weird way, Don Lemon would like that because he'll see himself as like the Rosa Parks of journalism because he's a martyr who was just standing up for the First Amendment. No, you weren't. It's just such BS, Larry. I'm sorry. It's the only conclusion I can come to.
Well, look at, he runs smack into the laws protecting religious freedom. And
that's exactly right.
But Joe, question, does this stuff, these antics that you have described brilliantly, really, and now I understand what's going on. But don't these antics backfire politically? I mean, doesn't it turn off people? I don't know. I don't know if people are following this story closely. We didn't on our show. Maybe I should have. But Susan Vargas said you would talk about it, so I figured it'd be great to put it in here because we haven't followed it. But I'm just saying, doesn't this backfire politically? Ordinary people, middle-class people look at this and, get turned off and teed off about it?
I think we live in a world, Larry, of two different alternative realities. And one is that, okay, what protesters, and I say that in scare quotes, are doing with federal law enforcement is a good thing. That if you had a chance to take on the Nazis before they took power in any real way, then, well, they would do it. So therefore, they feel that they're justified, and everything you're seeing is something that obviously is warranted. On the other side, the common sense side, that is like, okay, ICE is putting away murderers, rapists, child traffickers, sex traffickers, you name it, the worst criminals who, by the way, are already in the country illegally. That would be something like rooting against cancer, like you're removing the tumor, you're removing the cancer from society, and yet liberals are against this somehow. So you even had Stephen Colbert this week, Larry, who said that the actual Nazis of the 1930s were better than ICE. Whoa. All right. We're at this point, and it got applause from his audience. So I guess it's a 50-50 country where 50% is living in an insane world and 50% live in common sense. And the question is, which one wins? And that's what I guess the midterms and, more importantly, the 2028 presidential election will determine.
All right. We will. All right. I'm on it. I got it. All right. It's a good primer. Folks, Joe Concha's radio show is here on WABC, most of these same stations, and Sundays, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Terrific stuff. Busy guy. Joe, thank you. Appreciate it very much. We'll take a break, and on the other side, got to talk to my Ambassador Robert O'Brien. What is going on in Iran? Is there regime change coming in Iran? I'm Kudlow. Please stick around.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So one of the big stories ongoing is the Armada, the Iranian Armada or flotilla, as described by President Trump, and negotiations with Iran. The president was somewhat coy about those negotiations. And everybody wants to know what's going to happen. Is there going to be regime change in Iran? And we've got the smartest guy on this and other things, my friend, Ambassador Robert O'Brien, who is a former national security advisor and now the chairman of American Global Strategies. Robert, I mean, everybody's waiting. Oil prices have jumped $10. Everybody's waiting for some kind of Iranian attack. And I was reading the New York Post this morning. The Ayatollah, who's been underground, surfaced briefly to celebrate the 47th anniversary. But meanwhile, his son has allegedly been running the country. This is becoming a crazy story. What do you make of it?
Well, this regime has been, unfortunately, very sticky. And the reason it's been able to stay in power, Larry, is because it kills its own people. And we know they probably killed 30,000 people that were protesting recently. As you know, President Trump does not like the killing at all, and I think the regime is going to have to pay for the murder and mayhem that they've conducted. And the son is interesting. I hear he's got a $150 million business empire in Europe.
Oh my God!
So,
oh my God!
The Ayatollah and the Ayatollah Jr. are probably very spiritual men, but they have a secular bent to them as well.
Well, what are we gonna? Are we gonna bomb them or go and hit? How do we? Who's going to take over Iran? I mean, the president says he's given them a deadline, but he won't tell anybody. He says, "Well, that's between me and Ayatollah or whoever he's talking to." We're loading up, we're loading up with military in the area. I mean, do you think an attack is imminent? I mean, today, tomorrow, Monday. How do you read these tea leaves?
Well, we know what the president does, and we saw this with Venezuela. We saw it with Syria. The president gives a very fair deal, and for the Iranians, he said in the enrichment, in the nuclear program, and send your enriched material that you've already manufactured, send it overseas. You can't have enriched uranium, and you've got to stop your ballistic missile program. So he's given a very fair deal. He said, if you do that, I won't attack. They've come out and said, we're never going to do that because it would be the end of their regime. They think that, their neighbors and their own people would attack them without a nuclear program. So he's given them a fair deal, but he's put the hammer in place with his Armada, with the Abraham Lincoln, which is a very powerful aircraft carrier, 90 planes on it, plus all the other assets we have in the region. So we see the classic Trump setup that, offer them a fair deal, be reasonable, and if they don't accept, they pay the price. And so I think that the Iranians are going to have to do some soul searching, and if the Ayatollah wants to come up from his bunker for longer than 15 minutes, they better get rid of their nuclear program and do it quick.
We're talking with Ambassador Robert O'Brien, who is a former national security advisor to Mr. Trump, and he is now chairman of American Global Strategies. So, Robert, if you, how do you, on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 means we're going to come in and bomb the hell out of them. 1 means we're just using this as a deterrent. How would you rank the potential for a bombing mission?
Well, Larry, I don't think this is just a deterrent because you don't move that kind of a fleet to the area just to deter Iran. I mean, we can deter them without the fleet there. So the fleet is there. The fleet's the hammer, and so I think if it's really in the Iranians, the ball's in the Iranians' court. They're going to have to decide if they want their nuclear program or if they want their regime to survive. And they're in a tough position because without the nuclear program, their regime may not survive either. So I think the odds of the hammer being swung by President Trump is pretty high because, one, the Iranians are fanatical. I mean, these guys are not reasonable people. Doing the reasonable, the right thing, the smart thing is not in their, that's not in their character. And number two, they're so brutal and they've killed so many of their own people. I think they've lost all sympathy and respect and benevolence from the West and from President Trump in particular. He this, Larry. He always says, even if there are conflicts that don't affect America, why don't they stop the killing? He hates the killing of innocent people. And the Iranians have a lot of blood on their hands. So I would suspect that there will be some sort of kinetic response from the U.S. very soon.
30,000, Robert O'Brien. That's a big number, 30,000.
It's many times. Think of Tiananmen Square and how brutal that was. This was many Tiananmen Squares.
And you're right about Trump. Trump just does not like the killing at all, and he always talks about it when we were, in meetings and so forth. So, again, from a national security standpoint, so if we hit them, hurt them, knock them out. Who takes over, Robert? I mean, there's that problem too. Trump has raised that point that there's no one ready to take over. How do you see it?
No, you're right, Larry. In that region of the world, it's a very difficult situation. Sometimes you knock out one bad guy and you get someone worse who replaces them. But I think in the Iranian context, it'd be hard to get someone worse. Now, we could end up with a military dictatorship with the Revolutionary Guard trying to take over. And the military taking over, but there is this precedent that we had. It's not quite analogous, but when King Juan Carlos took over from Franco, and was a constitutional monarch and gave a little bit of space for the democratic process to work, we have a crown prince, Pahlavi, the Shah's son. He's a good man. He's an investment banker. He's not a politician. He's not he hasn't been proven as a leader, but he does have, some legitimacy as the former leader's son and the crown prince of Persia. So maybe he could come in for 6 or 8 months or a year and oversee a transition to democracy. So that is a potential, and I've been told by a lot of Iranian expats that the people of Iran do love him. So I mean, potentially that could happen, but. Yeah, you're right. We don't know what, if the Ayatollah flees to Moscow, which apparently is his plan B. Who takes over is a real issue for us. I
think. Look, I know what's. How do you say it? Pahlavi. What? Pahlavi. I know him. I've interviewed him.
Don't trust my Persian.
He's a good guy. He's a good guy, and he's an Iranian. He's a Persian patriot. And, there's a huge, Persian, people in New York, Washington, Los Angeles, probably Europe as well. It's a huge diaspora. I never know. I mean, and he has a lot of backers, but he doesn't have 100% backers. So I don't know. I take your point. It's a little tricky. I think the Revolutionary Guard, I mean, it's a military, it's a communist military dictatorship, isn't it, Robert? Really? They're the ones behind. I know you had the Ayatollahs like the front man, but I always thought that it was the military and the Revolutionary Guard and Secret Service and stuff like that was running the country. And that you're
100% right, Larry. And what they've done is they've taken a page out of the Kudlow, investment handbook, and they control the economy of the country. So the Revolutionary Guard, it's kind of like the Chinese military, or at least the PLA used to be. the sergeants and captains have dry cleaners and video rental shops, and when they had those and cafes, and they control the entire economy. So it's not just a military operation; it's an economic unit that is very powerful. So those people, they have money, but they don't have the kind of Ayatollah money to move hundreds of millions of dollars overseas and go to Moscow or Beijing. But they've got assets in the country, and they don't want to leave them. So they're going to be motivated to stay and fight for their privilege.
And one other point, I checked this with my sources in the Treasury Department. Iran, Robert O'Brien, Iran is still producing 3.2 million barrels of oil a day. They're still producing it, and they're selling it. And they have two big customers. The biggest customer is China, and then the second biggest is India. But China much more, but India too. So we have sanctions on the oil, allegedly, but we are not enforcing them. We are not enforcing them. The sanctions are there. Actually, they're tough sanctions because if you buy the oil, you're not allowed to do any business with the United States, but this is not being enforced. So they have cash, Robert O'Brien. That's what I'm saying. They're selling oil, and they have cash, and we're not doing anything about it.
Well, I think one of the things that's happening, and that could change very quickly, Larry, because I think it's kind of like Venezuela. The president knows that if he gets regime change, the Iranians are going to need a lot of money to rebuild the country. And if the oil keeps flowing, basically China can buy the oil at market prices instead of paying a big steep discount for the sanctioned oil. They pay market prices, and China can basically rebuild Iran if we can get regime change. But if the regime doesn't change, we're starting to see this ghost fleet, the tankers that move all this oil from. We're moving it from Venezuela. That's been shut down now. Venezuelans are going legit, and with our persuasion and guidance. And
yes.
This ghost
I got to
fleet
jump.
is now moving the Iranian and Russian oil, but we're going to start. We're shutting down the ghost fleet. So I think we'll be able to enforce these sanctions pretty effectively very soon.
Ambassador Robert O'Brien, my dear friend, he's the chairman now of the American Global Strategies. This is tough stuff. Very, very difficult stuff. All right, folks, we are going to take a break. And on the other side, we are going to do some stock market work for investment to make a buck or two. I'm Kudlow. Please stick around.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So we've done a lot of talking today about Kevin Warsh and the Fed and what that might mean and the outlook for the economy and related matters. And then there's this Iranian story that's unfortunately put all up about $10, but whatever. So let's get some investment advice. How does this story play out? We've got two pros. Stephanie Link, number one, Chief Investment Strategist, Hightower Advisors, Head of Investment Solutions, and Kenny Polcari, Chief Market Strategist at Slate Stone Wealth. I bumped into Kenny Polcari on the first floor of Fox. And Stephanie, I'm so glad you're here. I love you. And so give me, you've seen the Kevin Warsh thing, and I know you follow it. You understand all this stuff. What does it have? Does it have any particular impact? Okay, gold and silver crashed and whatever. How do you read this?
Well, it's great to be back on with you and Kenny. So thanks for having me, Larry. I think the market misinterpreted Warsh yesterday. I think the first reaction was he's a hawk, but actually I like the fact that he has political experience, he has investment experience, he's a very good communicator. I, for one, hope that he pares back all of the communication that the Fed does throughout in between meetings and that sort of thing. I think we get too much news from people that either are voting members or not. But he's a good communicator. He's going to corral the team. He's not a fan of a big balance sheet, so maybe he continues to shrink the balance sheet. At the same time, the banks can increase their balance sheets and release capital. And I think the biggest thing is that productivity is running in his favor. And productivity of 4.9% last quarter, on top of a unit labor cost of negative 1.9, that's a great recipe for the economy and for inflation. And so I think he actually can cut rates. And that was the thing that I heard yesterday that he wouldn't do. And so lower rates, tapering of the balance sheet, lighter bank capital rules, and by the way, the manufacturing renaissance and a decent consumer, I think you continue to see the GDP above trend, and GDP above trend means the market can continue to broaden out. So I feel pretty good.
I think you're reading it right. You're reading it right. And by the way, it's funny, you mentioned the productivity and the unit labor costs. On our show, we talked about that several times. I had Ed Yardeni on. You know Ed Yardeni. He's a very smart guy.
Yeah.
So over 4 quarters, unit labor costs are 1.2%. So that's wages minus productivity. Mm-hmm. Productivity is very high. Wages are going up, and the workforce is earning their pay hike with better productivity. You got a business investment capital goods boom, which helps productivity. All the things. Unit labor costs 1.2%, Stephanie. That really is that's the cost of labor, but it really is, in some sense, the basic inflation in the economy. 1.2%. Okay? So that's going to give Warsh, I think, a lot of elbow room to do what he wants to do. And, Kenny, he can, that gives him, gradually he's going to bring down the balance sheet. That's exactly what he should do. Okay? Right. And he will be able to, lower the Fed funds rate, whatever that means anymore, but there is a Fed funds rate or whatever he's paying. It's really what he pays the banks. He can do that. He's going to have, it won't be slowly, gradually. In other words, the wind is at his back. And one other point I want to make. Steph, if they yap too much.
Yes.
All of them. They yap too damn much.
Yes.
Wow. I'm sorry. So Ken Polcari, dive in. What you thinking?
So I agree with everything you guys said. What Stephanie said, it's all true. And here's where it kind of goes off the rails for me. Considering what she said is all true and the economy is doing really well, does that demand that rates have to go lower? That's my question. And that's where I that's where I have a little bit of a problem, because the economy is doing just fine with rates where they are. Could we adjust them another 25 basis points? Sure, that's not going to. But do I see them going to 2.5%? Not at all. And I think if Trump had his wish, Trump would say, we need another 100 basis points, or Stevie Mirren, we need another 100 basis points. That's what I just don't see, because to Stephanie's point, and to your point, the economy is doing really well with rates where they're at. And so I'm in this camp that I think Kevin Warsh was a great pick. I get all his experience. I do all that stuff. But I do think that the market interpreted him as more of a hawk and much more concerned about inflation than he is about the labor market, which at the moment apparently seems to be okay. So I'm in the camp that the market interpreted it, well, okay, we're not going to see any rate cuts under as immediately maybe as we thought we were. They're still on the table, but maybe the market's just repricing the idea that maybe he remains a little bit more hawkish than dovish.
It's, I'm just thinking, listening to both of you, it's like the dirty little secret is that the economy is doing great at current interest rates.
Right. It's true.
It's a secret, but we're growing the economy at 4% plus at the current rates.
Right.
You might get another quarter or a half, that kind of thing. You get it down to 3%, okay?
3%, 3%, I think, but I don't. 2.5%, I just don't see it.
No.
Not yet.
But here's the thing: we're growing 5.4% according to the Atlanta Fed tracker, and we all know we would have probably grown 7% if we didn't have a government shutdown. But what I think, we're doing all that growth without a housing cycle. Can you even imagine if we do get a housing cycle, and it's going to take lower rates? And I think this is one of the main reasons that that the Trump administration obviously wants lower rates, because it is a K-shaped economy. The upper end is doing so well because they own stocks, they own bonds, they own private markets, they own houses. The middle class and the lower class, they don't own any of that. So they haven't seen the wealth effect. And I think that Trump administration, they want to get rates lower so that they can have more participation for the consumer. And that, in turn, if we could get a housing cycle, my goodness, Katie barred the door in terms of the economy, in my opinion. Now, I think it's really, really interesting. I'd love both of your opinions on what the Trump administration is asking Fannie and Freddie Mac to do, because we own them. And if they're going to be continuing to buy mortgages, I mean, like, maybe that's his way of getting rates lower, in addition to, Warsh and some of the things that we've talked about.
Is it, I've thought a lot about this, the housing story. I don't know you can't jumpstart. It's a very difficult thing. I'm looking at the mortgage rate, the 30-year, Freddie Mac, 6.10 as of yesterday, more or less.
Right.
Then I'm looking, let me see, S&P 500 home builders. The last 52 weeks, minus 2.5%.
Yeah.
Right, so they haven't done a little better year to date in January. But anyway, it's not that easy to jumpstart it. Kenny Polcari, I mean, if you have a thought, I mean, buying these bonds, I'm not, it doesn't do it for me. They're trying to get the rates, whatever. The market will determine the rate, but I don't think it's going to have a big impact.
Right, but I'm in the camp that I think all those years that they kept rates at zero and mortgages were 2.75% and 3%, it caused the housing market to excel, which was fine. But my argument is leave rates where they are and let the housing market readjust. Ultimately, people that have been in their houses for 30 and 40 years and they're retired, they're grandparents now, they want to scale down, all that stuff. They'll recognize that if they really want to move this house, then there's got to be a little bit more flexibility in the price. My fear is if they force rates lower and mortgage rates lower, it's only going to ignite the housing market again. And so once again, okay, you're paying a lower rate, but it's a higher price. So you're in the same position, whether it's a higher rate and a lower price. You're in the same position. So I'd rather leave rates where they are and watch housing prices come in a little bit.
Steph, should we take a break? Let's take a break here. I had a thought, but we'll break first and then come back. We're with Stephanie Link, Hightower Advisors and Investment Solutions, Kenny Polcari, Slate Stone Wealth. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're talking stocks with two of the best. Stephanie Link, Chief Investment Strategist of Hightower Advisors, Head of Investment Solutions, and Kenny Polcari, Chief Market Strategist at Slate Stone Wealth. Kids, I was just going to say before the break regarding housing, if the economy keeps growing, okay, 4, 5, 6%, who knows? I'm very bullish on the economy. If it keeps growing, income goes up. Wages, income, take-home pay, middle class stuff, middle class. And that will give people the income resources to buy a house, a down payment. That's the old-fashioned way. And it helps them, helps their credit to get a loan, to get the mortgage. You just have to have some patience and let this economy run, okay? And Warsh will do that. Right? He will let the economy run. He sure isn't going to stop prosperity. That's my thought. Go ahead, kids. Take it. Run with it. Yes, no, maybe.
Well, I mean, I agree. I think the problem right now is that 70% of people that have a mortgage, it's under 4. And so you're not going to see 4s trading up for 6s, right? So that's the problem on existing. But new home sales, I think you're right. I absolutely think you're right. We all know what we all paid for our first mortgage. It was a heck of a lot higher.
Yep.
So we just have to kind of retrain, if you will. And by the way, just as a side, better growth also helps the deficit problem too, by the way.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah.
Kenny Polcari, gold and silver got whacked. Will they still get whacked or what? I kind of enjoyed it, if you want to know the truth. But what?
No, I did. I did too, because honestly, if you look at the charts, they've just gone parabolic, and really parabolic this year. Forget what they've done the last 2 years, but when parabolic this year, which I thought was really, it got to be a little bit ridiculous every day. Gold's up another $200. Gold up another. What the hell is going on? Is gold? So yes, did it come off yesterday on that news on the Kevin Warsh news? Yes, I think it did, because what I think I think that it recognizes, or it thinks it's that it's gotten too far ahead of itself, and B, that Warsh is going to be very, very methodical in terms of how he manages, how he communicates, and how he rallies the troops at the Fed. And so I don't think that it's so much being a hawk, but I just don't think he's going to be. Yesterday's action proved that he's not going to be so much of a dove.
He's not going to be a wuss.
Correct.
Like the current guy.
Correct. And so the Momo guys, all the momentum guys that ran into gold, pushed it higher, they right away they hit the sell button. And then what happens is gold, it takes a hit, and then you start getting margin calls, which only forces more selling. So do I think we could see more selling in gold and silver? I do, but do I think gold's going back to, $3,000? No, I don't think that's happening.
Wouldn't it be nice if we just have peace between the Fed chair and the president?
Yeah.
I mean, that to me is such a big, big deal. Like to wake up every day and look on Truth Social and look on Twitter and like the back and forth, of what, the Trump administration, what they want. I understand it, but like, I just want peace. And I think the fact that we have now, we have one of the unknowns was who's going to be next Fed chair. And now that's been answered. That's good. And then you dig deep into Warsh and his background, and then he knows the markets. I mean, look, he's at Duquesne Capital, for goodness sake.
And this is such a great point. We talked about this earlier in the program. Warsh gets along with Trump, okay?
Right.
Warsh gets along with Bessent.
Yes.
Warsh gets along with Hassett.
Yes.
Right.
You're going to have cooperation between the policymakers. And Stephanie is so right. And it's going to make it's going to look better, Steph. And that's going to reassure markets. They're all pals. I mean, honestly, look, I know, me too. All right. Warsh is one of my closest friends. Okay. He and Jane, I mean, I just have to say that you're going to have cooperation, which we have not seen in a long time.
Right. But I think Stephanie made a good point. I wonder if they're going to pull back some of that, the communication in between Fed meetings by all the other members of the committee that want to talk, they want to be out there, they want to tell their opinion and cause ongoing confusion, right?
Yes. Yes.
Stephanie, what do you like? I don't want to lose you. What do you like here?
So I changed my tune on energy. So I am now an energy bull. We talked about this last time I was on. I started to buy SLB. I bought some Chevron. Love financials. And the fact that they've pulled back and they've kind of just been hanging around, I think you get a great opportunity. There's no other industry that I follow that's going to benefit more from AI than the financial services sector. And I think those stocks are still extremely cheap. And I do like the consumer discretionary names. I think the consumer continues to consume, Larry, and I think it's so totally washed under the rug about the consumer. Everyone thinks that the growth is coming from this economy because of AI. And a lot of it is, but the consumer is doing their part too.
Terrific. Kenny? Dive in. What do you like?
Listen. I've always liked energy, financials for sure. I like utilities because I think utilities are going to continue to be a massive beneficiary of the whole AI boom. So they did well last year. I suspect that they're going to do well again this year. And then of course SMIDs. We've been talking about that, but I think the small and mid caps are going to do well. Look, they've started off. I think the whole month of January. I think they're up nearly 8.5% or something, way outperforming. And so therefore, I continue to believe in the small and mid caps this year as well.
Interesting. Anybody buying bonds? Nobody's buying bonds.
Bonds had a good year last year. Bonds were up 7%.
I know.
You know what? Yeah. The 60-40 rule actually worked last year. It wasn't dead.
Well, it wasn't dead. No, for sure it wasn't dead.
Yeah.
You two are wonderful. You two are just wonderful. And thank you for helping out, as always, Stephanie Link, Hightower Advisors, Investment Solutions, Kenny Polcari, Slate Stone Wealth, two of the best of the best. Thank goodness. We'll take a quick break, and we'll do some money in politics with Liz Peek and Steve Moore, and I'm still Kudlow.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So, of course, we've been talking about Kevin Warsh at the Fed. Big changes coming. And the other thing that's interesting, folks, you should take a look. The Wall Street Journal editorial page features Donald J. Trump, my tariffs have brought America back. It's a really interesting piece. I mean, it's quite a good piece. So let's talk about whatever we're going to talk about. I know we have, we got everybody. Liz Peek, Fox News contributor. We got her. Steve Moore. Whoa, he's here. Terrific stuff. But WABC radio host of More Money, which follows this show on most of these same radio stations. So you two, we didn't have a chance to talk to you yesterday about Kevin Warsh. Let me begin with Liz Peek. What are you thinking, Ms. Peek?
Well, I thought it was a terrific choice. And honestly, I've been so amused watching the liberal media deal with this because clearly they had hoped for a nomination that they could just land on as another sign of Trump sort of smashing norms and trying to get people around him who were going to kowtow to him. And obviously what the markets told us, I mean, there was a pretty independent voice raised about the Kevin Warsh nomination when gold and silver absolutely collapsed amidst the expectation that, guess what, interest rates are not going to solidly head lower indefinitely. I mean, that was the message. And so I really have had fun reading Bloomberg and all these people saying, what an odd choice, because they fully expected that Trump would bring on board someone who is going to bend the knee and lower interest rates, not only in May, but just sort of like constantly. And guess what? Kevin Warsh is a solid, independent thinker. He has all the right credentials and looks the part, as Trump said, but also is very concerned about inflation, concerned about the balance sheet of the Fed, and all the right things, Larry. I think he's a terrific choice.
You know, I will predict on the issue of getting through Congress, he will breeze through the Senate Banking Committee, and he will breeze through the vote on the floor. Whenever it happens, he will breeze through it. And he will get up there and give his opening statement, which is going to go through all the things he's been talking about. Growth does not cause inflation. The balance sheet needs to be smaller. That's the path towards price stability and lower interest rates. He will walk right through that stuff and fearlessly. And because he has had so much experience in markets as well as government, as well as the Fed, he will breeze through. And Steve Moore, it's I don't know if it's regime change, but I'll tell you, it's going to be transformational, and he's going to be in sync with the president. Doesn't mean he's going to do it. It doesn't mean he's his guy, but he is in sync with the president's thinking on the economy and Scott Bessent's thinking of the economy and Kevin Hassett's thinking on the economy. We will have cooperation among the senior policymakers, Steve Moore, and that's a welcome thing. Welcome thing.
Well, it is. And listen, you're the one, I think, who originally introduced me to Kevin Warsh, by the way, about 7 or 8 years ago. He used to come to our Unleashed Prosperity dinners all the time. And I've always been impressed with him. I think he has the right disposition and the right philosophy for the job. He is, he's a fan of something you've preached, which is King Dollar.
Yep.
And I want King Dollar. Now, Trump isn't necessarily on that message of King Dollar. He's been saying lately he wants a weaker dollar, but that's one thing. I think that Kevin Warsh does understand the importance of making sure that the dollar remains strong and stable. And and the most important thing is that we retain our status as the world reserve currency. Mm-hmm. And I think that's great. Mm-hmm. And so that's all good stuff. And
listen,
you're right, by the way, Larry. He's not just going to take his knee. He will be a truly independent. The left was, oh my God, he's just going to pick somebody who's going to do his bidding. Yeah. I don't think he will. I think he will be. He'll keep his eye on the ball. So I texted. Susie Wiles yesterday said, home run, he hit a bullseye with this choice. And I'm just so relieved that we're going to have somebody who believes in the importance of a sound, solid dollar. So I'm happy as can be.
Kevin Warsh is a very close friend of mine, so I know his thinking very well. And we see them all the time, Kevin and Jane. But here's what's good with the dollar. Okay, Warsh and Bessent, who want King Dollar, will win.
Good.
If the
the
president, look, I've heard this for years. The president will come out, he makes these statements because what he's really trying to say is that China and Japan and other countries, particularly in Asia, are depreciating their currencies for export reasons, and that's an unfair trading practice. That's what he's thinking when he says he wants a cheaper dollar. He doesn't really want a cheaper dollar. He wants the dollar to be the world's reserve currency. He does. But and look, they manipulate their currencies. We know that. Yep. That's what he's thinking. Kevin Warsh knows that, and Scott Bessent knows that too. You saw Bessent come out and sort of make a correction. I'm sorry, Liz. Go ahead, please.
No, I think that's exactly right. And I think President Trump, if presented with the idea that China is actively trying to undermine the dollar, which it is trying to do by buying gold and dumping and buying less treasuries, I think Trump will get on board with that because he has a very correct view that China is our primary adversary, and he wants to basically confront all the stuff they're doing. So I think the trade thing is taking care of itself because of tariffs. I don't think we have to worry as much about having a weak dollar in order to compete.
Did you read?
Can I just riff off something that Liz just said? Because this is a real claw in my throat right now. What the hell are the Europeans doing, Larry? I mean, they're talking about partnering with China.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this is the most outrageous betrayal of these European leaders, like little pussycats that, oh my gosh, we're mad at Trump, so we're going to go trade with. These are the same people that are how hypocritical. All they've been talking about for the last 15 years is climate change. There's no country in the world that has polluted the climate more than China does, and they're going to run into the hands of their enemies. This is a continent of Neville Chamberlains.
Oh, I like that, Neville Chamberlains. I love that. I knew him well. Gosh, that's terrific. Steve, you should get your group. I think the European economies are all pretty terrible.
They're horrible.
If you look at 4-quarter changes or 8-quarter changes, I think they're all stagnant. I mean, we're growing at 4 to 5. I don't think they're growing at all.
They're not. And by the way, I'll give you another amazing statistic that if you look at the 50 most profitable technology companies in the world, you know how many of them are European?
Probably
5 out of 50, and we have like 30 of them, and
that's why they attack us. That's why that's why they attack us.
Yeah,
because they're so bad.
Yep.
But I don't. Putting that aside, I mean, you just did you read the tariff thing that he wrote today? Did either of you read his tariff?
Yes. Yeah, I did.
So I thought it was pretty damn good.
I thought it was great. Yeah, I thought it was very good, Larry. I think the question is he doing that because the Supreme Court is so delayed in getting out a decision on the tariffs? Is he feeling like there's a difference of opinion there, and so he had to kind of add a little extra argument, put it out there? I don't know. I mean, what do you make of this delay from the Supreme Court?
I think they can't figure out how to deal. In other words, I think they'd like to restrain him, but they understand the money flows are complex. And so I think they don't want to be in the budget business, okay? They don't want to, be in the customs money business or the treasury business. So I think they're trying to figure out what to do about it. And it just keeps being delayed. So, Trump, look, I'm supposed to sit down with him Monday, not this Monday, but next Monday, and we'll talk about this. But I want to make a point, Steve Moore, especially to you, because I love you and you worked for the Wall Street Journal all those years. The retaliation that everyone predicted did not happen. I mean, basically, it didn't happen. That's the difference between this and the 1930s. And the level, one more point, if you allow me, the tariff level, effective rates is really around 15%. All right. It's not, the Smoot-Hawley tariff was upwards of 50 to 60%. And he got a lot out of this. He's still getting a lot and making money on it to cut the deficit. I mean, I just wish that the Journal and others would say, you're right. You're right. Yeah, he's won this round. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Steve, please.
I was just going to say that, I was cheating on you, Larry. I was on the BBC this week, and it was very, they were very angry, at Trump, and they were very adversarial. And the whole subject was how Europe is now leaning towards China. And I made this point because they said, well, how can we trade with Trump when he's got these high tariffs? I said, wait a minute. Europe for the last 40 years has had higher tariffs on us than we had on you.
Yes.
You guys are just big hypocrites.
Absolutely.
And so they didn't have much of a response to that.
Well, you're right, though. You're right. See, the reciprocity is still the key word.
Yeah. That's right.
All right.
And can I say one thing on that? If you go back and look at the Smoot-Hawley period, the United States had a huge trade deficit with the rest of the world. Surplus. So there was ample room for retaliation. We don't have that. We don't have a trade surplus with practically anybody. So the idea that these are two very similar circumstances, it was complete rubbish. And really the laziness of the people at the BBC and all the other organizations opining on this, they never did their homework. They really never. Why? Because this is a brand new thing. Really, no one has ever taken a gigantic trade deficit and said, how am I going to monetize this? And that is or weaponize it, if you will. That's what Trump has done. And it's a very successable operation, as his piece today showed.
By the way, in terms of that awful period, the 30s, let's not, I got to take a break, but let's not forget.
Taxes.
That's right. Herbert Hoover decided we had to balance the budget. And so the top income tax rate went from 25% to 63%. Okay. 25 to 63. It's just so that had a lot to do with the Depression. It's among the stupidest things in the history of the earth. I got to take a break. We're talking to Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, and Steve Moore's radio show, and I'm going to plug it after this show on most of these same radio stations. More Money is coming up. I'm still Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
We're talking to Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, and Steve Moore, host of the More Money radio show, comes up right after this on most of these same stations. Can I ask you guys, I don't think it's gotten enough attention. These Trump accounts, children born between January 1, 2025 and December 31st, 2028, receive a one-time $1,000 federal contribution regardless of family income. No means testing, no phase-outs, no income caps. Parents can establish accounts. They can have more contributions from, all these companies are starting to do it. But if you look at the, compounded interest, you're going to create a nation of millionaires. They're going to be capitalists. They're going to be owners. They're going to be wealth. I mean, I think this is the most extraordinary thing. I know some conservatives don't like it. I've heard, I don't know why. It doesn't get much attention. This is a huge thing. And it could turn working class kids into millionaires, for heaven's sakes. Somebody say something. This is so big.
All right, so I will say this. I think it's terrific in that it's an education initiative.
Yeah.
I mean, our kids aren't learning anything about the economy, about how to invest or anything like that. Leonard Lauder, who passed away recently, head of Estee Lauder, wrote a wonderful memoir, and he talks about, as a kid, going to public school in New York, being taken to the local savings bank, and each kid somehow got a savings book with $10 in it, something like that. Wow. And so there is a precedent for this. That was a public school initiative where they thought this would teach the kids something about saving, investing, et cetera. And Leonard, it made such an impression on him. It was the kind of opening thing in his book. So I do think it is honestly, it's a brilliant thing. And I hope it goes forward. I hope it really does catch on and more companies fatten the purse there. I just think it's terrific.
The numbers here, when you compound this, are huge. Huge. I mean,
what is $1,000 compounded at 5% over 20 years or something? Does anyone? I don't have that number.
Wait a second.
Do you know?
Hold on a second. Hold on. Let's see. Nation of I don't have it for 1,000 because let's see. You have supplemental money. You've got family money, and you've got potentially corporate money. What I've got is, let's see. To accumulate anywhere between stock going 175,000 to 700,000 by the time they reach 18 years old. By the time these kids reach 30, they could have as much as $1 million. Yep. But I don't know the precise contributions. But what Liz said is so important. By the way, Leonard Lauder was such a wonderful human being.
Lovely guy.
Wonderful man. But Steve Moore, I don't know. I mean, I know you've done it on on your daily sheets. You've mentioned this thing, but I just don't think it's gotten enough play. I mean, it's almost, this is what we wanted for Social Security. Put it in the stock market instead of these T-bills. This, in a sense, is the Social Security thing.
Yeah. No, look, you're absolutely right. And by the way, I was at the event in Washington, D.C., and he did an amazing job, and so did Scott Bessent. And, but the one who sold the show, as you know, was Nicki Minaj.
Yes.
Yes. A new hero.
Yes.
And by the way, she was fantastic on the stage, but she did something that, I wonder where all these other, pop stars and Hollywood people talk about how much they care about poor people. Nicki Minaj said for every one of her fans, she's going to put money into their account. I thought, what a great thing. So look, I agree with everything that Liz just said, but we also need to get people in their 20s and 30s to be able to put 10% of their paychecks to divert it away from the black hole of Social Security and put it into an account. And that would have incredible supply side. It would be like giving every American a 10% raise. And if you do that in combination with these Trump accounts, we will have a nation of millionaires, and people will retire with $2-3 million in these accounts. So I love it. And by the way, acculturating people to be savers and investors is so important. And Liz is so right. I mean, I remember, Liz, by the way, when my mom took me to the bank, I had $14. And she said, "You can put this in this account and and I go, oh, they're going to actually pay me interest on this. Oh, that's pretty cool."
Yeah. Yeah.
Is this does this require legislation, or they just go ahead and do it? I don't know how it works.
I don't either.
I don't know.
We got to find out.
Yeah.
I mean, they have to have right.
I think they started. Haven't they started them? Or
I thought so. Yes.
Yeah.
But if it's an executive order or not, because there's $1,000 from the government that goes in. So that.
Yeah. I mean, Congress has to have some say on that, right?
I would think so. I'm just saying. For all the reasons we've talked about, this is a very good thing and a very big deal, and needs to be pushed.
Would the Democrats vote against this? I mean, that would be interesting.
I was just going to say what he should do is make this a standalone bill that requires an up or down vote.
I agree.
As you say, if Democrats stand in not one of these omnibus things on page 837, make this a test. You know, do you care about kids or do you not care about?
They'll all vote
Very
against
simple.
it. They'll vote against it because it has his name on it.
Probably.
I mean, that's the pattern. But I think this is a big deal. A nation of millionaires. I love that. Anyway, kids, thank you, Liz Peek. Thank you very, very much. Steve Moore's, let's see, the radio, More Money, WABC, right after this broadcast on most of these stations. Dial up Steve Moore, please. I'm Kudlow, still kicking around, and hope we'll be back next weekend. Thanks for listening, folks.
Thanks for listening to The Larry Kudlow Show. You can hear The Larry Kudlow Show Saturday mornings at 10. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here? America's debt is now over $38 trillion. So, protect your savings with something real. Gold. Sanctuary Metals helps you move a portion of your retirement into physical gold. Tax deferred and penalty free. Please call 800-801-6487 or just visit sanctuarymetals.com to get your free retirement defense guide. That's sanctuarymetals.com.